The movie opens up during a time when an alien invasion killed half of humanity, forcing the survivors to hide in underground bunkers. The only way humans can go back to the surface is by becoming a soldier and serving for at least 100 days. 50 years later, a soldier named S.U.M returns to the surface and begins his 100 days above ground. He gets on a military tank and is taken to the outpost Cerberus. This is where he will be working to help people who had chosen to stay above ground get to safety in a shelter called S.U.M. Once the tank stops, all of the soldiers get off and begin walking towards their designated posts. By the time it is S.U.M's turn to get to his assigned post, he finds that the door of the bunker where he was required to stay is jammed. He decides to climb up to the watchtower to contact his commander, who will be able to guide him. Inside, he finds himself surrounded by computers that run a complete DNA check to identify him. When the system recognizes him, he is congratulated on the beginning of his 100-day service. He is then briefed that he will be responsible for monitoring their territory for any signs of the aliens and sending stray civilians to their shelters. Someone ensures that the protective ring is in order and there are no security breaches. He double-checks the cameras and the power supply before going back to Cerberus. This time, he is able to enter the post. However, he discovers that the soldier that he was supposed to replace is missing. Confused at the blatant breach in the protocol, his commander reassures him that the soldier named VAC-7 was taken away due to a medical emergency. Satisfied with the explanation, S.U.M takes his seat and listens to the command center give him instructions. He is given an access code for the monitors and told that he must always stay inside and not leave his zone unattended because it is essential for the survival of humanity. His commander also shows him an alternate way of entering the bunker through a secret passageway that will allow him to go outside. At first, S.U.M voices his hesitations about going out of the bunker, but once his commander assures him that he will be okay, he begins settling down. He walks into his room and finds that it has been left neglected. Someone comes to his bunker to deliver his rations and even leaves behind cigarettes for him every day. Later that night, as S.U.M falls asleep, he dreams of children laughing and playing around, but is soon reminded of his reality when the alarm clock reminds him of his remaining service days. In the morning, S.U.M goes through his routine by exercising and taking a shower. Then, he runs a routine territory check, and when he finds that there is no change, he grabs a ration of food and begins eating. Sometime later, he suddenly hears strange sounds coming from outside and decides to check it out. Upon inspection, he notices movement as well, but does not go closer to investigate. Instead, he calls his commander and reports his findings. His commander brushes off his concerns and tells him that he does not need to worry about anything and that everything is normal. Even though he still has his doubts, S.U.M decides to go to sleep. Once again, he finds himself dreaming about laughing children again. Several days go by and S.U.M continues going through his service days. For him, every day looks the same. He wakes up in the morning, gets his exercise in, takes a shower, eats his food, and smokes one cigarette. Soon, there are only 87 days left until the end of his service. One day, S.U.M hears the noise again and notices movement as well. This time, he decides to investigate it. However, he only finds a white rat, but before he has the chance to look at it properly, it manages to run away. All of a sudden, one of the monitors starts beeping and alerts him of an attack on the civilians in the shelter that has killed everyone. However, to his surprise, when he runs another system check, he discovers that the defense lines are not damaged, indicating that no one came inside. Yet, the camera picks up movement in the nearby bushes. Someone contacts his commander and reports his findings, only for the commander to dismiss his concerns and insist that he does not need to worry about any intruders. Before he knows it, there are only 71 days left until the end of S.U.M's service days. Each day looks like the previous one, and S.U.M even manages to befriend the white rat he had seen and names him Doctor. He begins feeding the rat, who is no longer afraid of S.U.M and comes out of its hiding place. One night, S.U.M receives his alert about one of the cameras in the territories that has malfunctioned. The soldier puts on his suit and goes out of the bunker to run a technical performance check on the security system. He fixes the camera and looks around to survey the territory. This is when he notices a dead bird hanging from the tree with a token poking out of its stomach. Someone takes it out and discovers VAC-7's code on it. Before he can take a longer look at it, the system alerts him of possible toxic emissions from the token. He leaves it there and heads back to his bunker, where he calls his commander again and reports his findings. As usual, the commander brushes off his concerns and assures him that VAX-7 had fallen sick and was recovering in a bunker nearby. Despite the commander's reassurances, S.U.M becomes suspicious of the commander's overly cheerful tone and positivity, but decides not to question it. With 65 days of service left, the United Nations warns people on the surface of the lurking danger and advises everyone to stay underground. One morning, after his regular routine, someone decides to go out into the territory once again. When he hears the system's warnings about toxic emissions, he looks around and finds a strange creature hiding deep inside the forest. When the creature notices him watching it, it quickly runs deeper into the forest and goes into hiding. As someone returns to the bunker, he runs another security check, but is surprised to find that there are no breaches in the defense ring, which might be alarming. Not satisfied with his findings, someone decides to investigate the bunker and the areas that he had been told were restricted. As he walks deeper into the bunker, he discovers bloodstains on the walls, which leads him to suspect the commander's reassurances about having VAX-7 evacuated. He begins to suspect that VAX-7 might have killed himself and was never taken out of the bunker. This is when he decides to access video recordings of his predecessor, but the system denies him access to the files. With no other choice left, someone breaks into VAX-7's locker to get answers and finds his sketchbook hidden away along with a radio receiver. When he opens the sketchbook, he notices a sketch of the Cerberus and a neighboring post, Graham. This caught his attention since posts were not allowed to communicate amongst each other. A few days later, with 54 days left until the end of his term, someone often finds himself thinking about his neighboring post. One day, he decides that the soldiers in that post might have answers to his questions and tries to establish contact with them. However, he soon discovers that he cannot go past the perimeter because of an implant in his leg that prevents him from crossing the ring lines. The implant would get activated, causing shooting pain in his leg. The system keeps on beeping and alerting him to return to his post. With no other choice left, someone climbs up on a tree and tries calling out for the soldier in post Graham, but to his disappointment, he receives no response. He returns to the post and starts going through archived files to find an answer. Although he finds nothing interesting, he does notice activity outside again. Before he can go out to investigate, the power goes off, and the soldier senses a presence behind him, despite the system telling him that there has been no intrusion. Someone rushes outside and starts blindly firing away, scaring away any birds nearby. When the power comes back on, he goes back into the bunker, contacts his commander, and reports that the system is malfunctioning and not picking up accurate activity. The commander promises to send a repairman as soon as possible and reminds him that there are only 40 service days left for him. The next morning, someone tries to access the archived files again, but is disappointed to find that the power outage has led to the data getting lost. He gives up on trying to find the files and continues on with his usual routine. The next day, he wakes up feeling sick and goes to take his medication. All of a sudden, he hears children's music being played through the radio receiver left by VAX-7. When he goes to inspect it, he finds that the soldier from Post Graham is calling him, possibly to check up on his friend, VAX-7. He answers the call, and they begin talking, but their conversation is cut short abruptly as the power goes out again. Someone calls the commander again and reminds him of the fact that he had promised a repairman would be showing up soon to fix the issue. The commander tells him that there has been a recent attack nearby that has killed several people, leaving behind no survivors, which is why they had to be cautious about sending anyone in due to the risk attached. Several days go by without the repairman showing up. Someone finds himself going outside more often. One day, while he is outside, he notices a woman hiding inside a cave with her child. He tries to offer them his help and invites them back to his bunker, but they act as if they are more scared of him than the danger outside. He begins to feel confused and wonders if the people on the surface even want to be saved. He returns to his bunker and starts talking to the rat and tells it about the children he sees in his dreams. It was later discovered that the ability to dream was no longer seen as normal, and someone was starting to develop signs of mental illness. As the days of his service are about to end, he tries contacting the soldier in Post Graham again, but receives no response as per usual. One night, someone goes out into the territory and finds a large deer that he ends up killing and consuming eagerly. The more he eats the wild animal meat, the more he behaves like a wild man and shoots at random things in the territory. He even goes out with his protective gear and helmet. One day, he tries contacting Graham again, but when there is still no response, he begins to feel frustrated. In his rage, he walks into a zone filled with toxic emissions and almost loses consciousness. The toxic emissions cause him to enter a semi-delirious state where he starts hallucinating creatures that are running away from him. Someone picks up the radio receiver and tells Graham that he believes his predecessor is being held in the forest. However, as usual, the neighboring post does not reply. With only 14 days left until the end of his service days, the commander finally sends a repairman. As the repairman looks around, he expresses his disapproval of someone befriending the rat. When he notices the soldier's confused face, he explains that VAX-7 had also become friends with the rat, even though it was against protocol. The repairman then gets to work and begins checking on all the cameras to make sure that they are turned on. Behind him, S.U.M double-checks the cameras, but finds that the cameras near the defense ring have been turned off. Meanwhile, the repairman continues fixing the system when the rat climbs up on the table and distracts him. Annoyed, the repairman shoves the rat away, injuring it. This does not sit well with S.U.M, and he aims his gun at the repairman. He orders the repairman to disable the cameras inside the bunker and unlock the archived files for him. When the repairman refuses to do so, a fight breaks out between the two of them. Eventually, he overpowers the repairman, but he tells someone that he cannot access the files without the personal codes of 2 guards. Beaten up, the 2 men sit down, and the repairman begins telling the soldier that he had gone through something similar when he was serving as a soldier. He, along with several other people, was in a horrific helicopter crash that killed everyone except for him and his partner. When he regained consciousness after the crash, he went searching for his missing partner. He had discovered that his partner had cut off his own ears. It had turned out that people were hearing a strange sound, a sound so horrible that they would cut off their own ears to avoid hearing it. Then, the 2 of them had gotten stuck in a sandstorm, and this is when they had seen a huge shadow circling around them. They had been unable to explain what they had seen, and as a result of the storm, his lungs had filled up with sand. Later, someone decides to lock the repairman in his bunker while he contacts the commander. He reports back that everything is in order. Once his call with the commander ends, he enters both his and VAX-7's personal codes and gains access to the files. He discovers that the loneliness and stress had gotten too much for VAX-7 and that he had lost his sanity. He shares his discovery with Graham over the radio. However, he finds himself obsessed with the conspiracy theory that the command and the leaders of their world were deceiving everyone by instilling fear in them about a threat that no one had actually ever seen. The reason they had sent people underground was so that they could restrict the consumption of natural resources that were dwindling, while the rich and powerful stayed above ground and were consuming what little resources were left. Several days later, someone hears the system announcing another attack. Frustrated, he smashes the system's alarm with the jar that he was keeping the rat in. To his horror, he finds that he has killed his own friend. He then takes off all of his clothes and goes out in the open, where a monstrous creature attacks him. He fights back and manages to take down the creature, only to discover that it is VAX-7. He returns to his post, releases the repairman, and asks him where he can cut off the power for the defense lines. He explains that he knows about the conspiracy theory and intends to free humanity. Although the repairman knows that someone has lost his sanity and will lead to humanity's doom, he still obeys him. The movie ends with someone contacting Graham again and informing him that he is going to rescue him. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.